Um, it is also being recorded. Diolch, Gwenno. So just to make sure that everyone's got the correct language available to them, if you're a Welsh speaker and you'd like to just hear people's question and answers through Cymraeg, then you don't need to do anything. If you'd like to hear everything through English and you don't speak Welsh or you just prefer English, at the bottom of the screen there's a More button. If you click those three dots, there'll be a globe icon that says Interpretation. Click that and then click English. And that's if you're an English speaker and you are more comfortable hearing everything through the medium of English. If you're a Welsh speaker, then just leave everything as it is. So it's the three buttons saying More, Interpretation, and then select English. And if you've done that correctly, you should hear Stefan speak now. If Stefan, you want to say anything. Great, diolch, Stefan. And I'm hoping everyone managed to hear that. If anyone has got issues with but not hearing Stefan and has clicked English, please just flag it in the chat and my colleague Gwenno can give you some support. But I think we'll make a start. So, welcome everyone to today's event on Minewater Heat, future projects for the community energy sector in Wales. Gwen, if you could move the slide on. And so, reminders before we start, as I've mentioned, interpretation is available. Today's event will be recorded, and please ask any questions that you have in the chat function. Myself or Gwenno can come to them as people are speaking. We will have about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So if you'd like to keep any for then and have a chance to ask all of our speakers the questions. And after today's event, we'll be sharing the slides and any follow-up information with everyone via email. Next slide, please, Gwenno. And so this event today is kindly sponsored by the Energy Learning Network, which is a national lottery funded UK-wide project which aims to power forward community energy projects across the UK, helping more groups to launch or grow schemes that decarbonise the grid, create resilience, reduce energy bills, and create meaningful benefits for local people. The network is a collaboration between climate solutions charity Ashton, the Centre for Sustainable Energy, and leading community energy bodies across every UK nation, including Community Energy England, Community Energy Scotland, ourselves, Community Energy Wales, and Action Renewables in the north of Ireland. So today's event is about Minewater Heat as a potential future avenue for the community energy sector in Wales. And we're joined by a number of speakers who will each provide their own perspective and expertise on the topic. These include Gareth Farr from the Mining Remediation Authority, Sophie Jackson from East Durham Community Trust, Ali Turner from Holding Together Partnership, Professor Simone Abram from Durham Energy Institute, Anthony Collins from Coal Action Network, and Bethan Syed from Climate Cymru. And if you can just change the slide for me, please, Gwenno. Diolch. And so this is essentially the holding slide that shows the potential in the South Wales coalfield of Minewater Heat opportunities. There's also a cluster when we go onto the map in a second of North East Wales coalfield that's also got potential. And I suppose we know from our own work in and around the coalfield communities of South Wales particularly that many people discuss a real want for our former mines and wider brownfield parts in our communities to be revitalised. And one way to do that is to explore the avenue of Minewater Heat projects. I think it's fair to say that so far quite little has been done in Wales on Minewater Heat, and likely we sort of understand that because other technologies are more straightforward, they potentially have less costs and complications, and so I think there's been a drive to focus on energy generation and electricity generation from hydro and wind and things like that. But the projects in England that Gareth will explore really show the potential of what could be achieved in Wales and include a focus on community ownership and delivery in these projects. So I think you'll hear probably today a lot about, initial hurdles and barriers and cost implications. But hopefully today's event will also show like just the huge benefits that these projects also bring, from the appeal and support they tend to have within communities as a way to sort of tap into local heritage and culture, to a legacy consideration as well, allowing communities to sort of now share in the benefits of former mining sites that once tended to represent, carbon intensive industries that were quite harmful to local communities. These projects tend to provide sustainable heat and have a huge lifetime that makes the initial investment pay off. And as we can see from the map that we'll go on to open now, the potential is quite huge. So, Gwenno, if you wouldn't mind putting the link to the Minewater, Welsh Government Minewater heat maps in the chat, I'd really encourage anyone while the event's going on to just click on that link, find the community you're from or the community you're interested in, and just have a look. I mean, the coalfields just completely light up with potential. And I'll let Gareth get on to explaining a bit about that. But without further ado, I'll hand over to Gareth, our first speaker, to give us some background on the technology itself. Diolch.
Is that working for you? That's great.
Yeah, that's great. Diolch, Gareth.
Wonderful. Thanks. Okay, so thanks so much for the invite to speak at this. I've got 10 minutes, I think, to get the ball rolling. So my name's Gareth Farr. I work at the Mining Remediation Authority. I'm the head of the heat team, and we cover the whole of Great Britain, support mine water heat projects across the whole thing. I am, as it happens, based outside of Cardiff, where I've lived for the majority of my life. So I can't have a bias to any area in Great Britain, of course, but I'll leave you with that fact. And let's see what we can do in Wales. So a bit of an introduction. We were the Coal Authority, we're now the Mining Remediation Authority, but some interesting statistics. Across Great Britain, nearly 25% of properties are based on the wider coalfield area. If we move to Wales, that's nearly 50% of addresses on the wider coalfield area, which is a huge amount. There's a lot of heating demand, also a lot of poorly insulated buildings. There'll also be an increasing cooling demand, because I'm sure if you're like me, you'll be thinking, why don't I have air conditioning in the summer when it really ramps up? And unfortunately, there's also a huge amount of fuel poverty, with some really depressing stats in the recent Welsh Government heat strategy. So what's our role within this? The MRA, we actually own the majority of mine workings across Great Britain on behalf of the UK government. So we have a role in sort of licensing, ensuring it's used safely, accessed safely, and a lot of other things around coalfields and so on and so forth, as you'll all probably know. Enabling mine water heat schemes is something we're really passionate about. It's key in our business plan, and we also have a bespoke mine water heat opportunities framework. The slides will be shared at the end, and you can explore those links. So there's the sort of corporate introduction. So let's get on to actually what on earth is this? So I've simply summarized here the ways you can get heat from the coalfield. So we're talking about heat that is under the ground, heat that is warmed by the geothermal gradient. So in very simple terms, the deeper you go, the warmer you get. So we've got kind of three broad ways to recover this heat. Now, this heat can be found just within the rocks themselves. So the image on the left is a closed loop borehole. So we drill a borehole down, you throw a pipe into it in effect, which is a closed loop, and that sends a coolant around it. It picks up the heat, takes it to the building, returns it, and it repeats that cycle over and over again. Often you can have one of these for one house, or you can have lots of them linked together in shared ground arrays. There's pros and cons of every approach I'll talk about. I guess one pro of this approach is you don't need water itself. So is it mine water heat, you might ask me? Well, I still think it's heat from the coalfield, but it might not technically be mine water heat. But I don't think we need to get dragged down into an academic discussion on that. It's still heat from the subsurface in the coalfield for coalfield communities. If we move to the middle slide, which is probably a little bit more like what you're expecting, what it shows is two boreholes, a deeper one, which has got the red water coming out, which represents warmer water, and a cooler one going back in, which is the blue one. So in effect, what we can do is drill into abandoned mine workings. Now, for the most part, not everywhere, but for the most part, when the mines were closed, a lot of the pumps that kept these mines dry were turned off, and water has now filled in these workings. So there are huge areas of workings under the ground filled with mine water. Why is this a benefit? Well, it provides much better ability to take large volumes of water out. And as I showed in the first slide, there's a large correlation with where people are living and working and needing heating and cooling. If we're luckier, though, in Wales, there's not huge opportunities for this. We can repurpose abandoned mine shafts, so we don't need to drill. Those opportunities are few and far between in Wales, as far as I'm aware, most having been sort of made safe, so people don't fall into them or other things. And then the third example on the right is we can take heat from mine water when it comes to the surface. So across Great Britain, we operate 80 mine water treatment schemes. In Wales, I think we have 15 or 14 schemes. And we do that primarily, and we've been doing it since the 90s, to protect the surface water environment. So some people that are my age, or no doubt older, may remember the disastrous state of some of our surface water courses. A lot of these operations actually clean the mine water 24/7, protecting the aquatic environment from iron and other pollutants, so serving a very good purpose, but they can be reused to take heat from them. So what I'll do now is I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour through some schemes. I'm going to go from really big down to much smaller. That's my sort of range. I guess the key messages I want to deliver is that this is technology ready. It has been done and is being done in the UK. And there's a range of twists and turns for how we do it. So I'll show you some examples. Oh, the other point I want to make is I'm talking about mine water, but you can imagine this is any water as well. It's not just applying to mine water. So this slide might look a little bit complex, but in effect, there's lots of dots on a map. So our map of Great Britain here has dark green areas which show coalfields. And on top of it are dots. The dots are all schemes that have been constructed to recover heat from the coalfield. The big green dots are the big green dots are definitely what, oh,
Stefan, I think some people are getting a little bit of feedback from your mic. Okay, diolch. Sorry, Gareth. Do you want to carry on?
it's good. I just thought the interpreter was amazed by the map, but anyway, I'm assuming he will be. So the large green dots are where we have full-blown mine water heat schemes, pumping mine water around, taking the heat off, putting it back underground. You can see dots in the northeast primarily, and we'll go through some of these with some pretty pictures shortly. You can see they're fairly large sizes. We've got some schemes that are almost ready. These are the orange dots. And there were some decommissioned schemes as well, some in Scotland, one in Wales. These were often like early trial schemes and things, but worth noting where they have been. And the very teeny weeny black dots are the closed loop schemes, which I showed you. We've got records of at least 250 of these schemes being installed across the coalfield areas. And no doubt there's many more since I last downloaded that data 2 years ago. And again, I'll provide an interesting example from South Wales. So starting big, and we have to start in the northeast because currently all of the big schemes are as far away as possible from my house to go to, which is annoying, and I would like to see a big scheme in Wales, please. So this is the Gateshead Heat Network delivered by the council. You can see the funding amounts here are big, HNIP and council funding totaling quite a lot of millions. But in effect, they've used mine water here to repurpose a CHP combined heat and power gas heat network, and it is really successful. It's currently supplying over 600 residential offices, large public buildings. You can see the Glass House and the Baltic Contemporary art centre there as well. All those council buildings, a college, and also going to lots of the warehouses in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture. So this has been delivered by Gateshead Council. We supported them with the drilling of boreholes and setup of the scheme. It's probably one of the largest mine heat networks on the planet. It's really exciting, and it proves it can work at scale. They've also got an urban solar park there on some brownfield land, which also supplies electricity, to help run the network. A take home from this is actually, if you look in the sort of middle bottom of the image, you can see some teeny weeny yellow dots I've called reinjection well and abstraction wells. That is the surface footprint of the boreholes. It's tiny. They're covered up, and you can walk across them on the surface as if you didn't even know they were there. There's a pink building there called Minewater Heat Pump Building. It's not pink in real life, you may be glad to know of, although I do have a pink front door, so some people may like that colour. And that's it really. So most of your infrastructure is underground, and it's proved really successful. So that's the big one. There's also two other schemes up here, privately owned and funded, heating large bonded warehouses, which I won't talk about because of time. Staying in the northeast, Seaham Garden Village. So this is a scheme, and you can see in this picture here is a crane building an energy centre there, and there's lots of houses popping up. This is a brand new garden village. There will be any moment now a switch on, hopefully. So it says under construction, but it's incredibly close, as you can see. And these homes will be provided with mine water heating, which is super exciting. The way this has been done, this has been added on to an existing location where we treat mine water. So the benefit of that is we're taking the mine water out of the ground and treating it. So I like to call it a plumbing job, really, in effect, that the heat user sort of just attaches to an existing operation. If any of my managers are here, I don't mean to belittle it so much as it's a very complex, exciting project, but in effect, you attach something onto it. It removes risk of drilling and testing and uncertainties with capital like that. And good news is there might be a nice opportunity for something like this in Wales. So scooting on, we've also installed a mine water heat scheme at a leisure centre as well. This provides a slightly smaller scale. There's also a primary NHS primary care unit there. It was funded by public sector decarbonisation scheme, which has unfortunately been closed despite it being incredibly useful. This one will be live officially shortly. And moving to Wales, we finally have a scheme up and running. It's a small scheme. And in this one, what we did here, we used this crane to plonk the heat exchangers, which you can see being lowered into this orange pool of mine water at a treatment scheme, directly in. There's a couple of pipes, and they go to a factory and offices across the road, which belongs almost conveniently to Thermal Earth, who are a renewable energy installer. And it provides heating and passive cooling to their warehouse and offices, and it's running at a COP of about 4, I think, at least, and they seem to be very happy with it. So there's plenty more on that in the media and online as well. You can see I'm with the First Minister at the bottom there as well, and she thoroughly enjoyed the visit. Going on to a scheme that hang on, nearly at the end. Going on to a scheme that wasn't mine, but was really, really impressive, was Park Iron in Tonnerefail. What was impressive about this? Well, it's lots of closed loop boreholes in a shared ground array. There's lots of these around now, which is really great. But it's also the UK's first investor-funded system. So they had pension funds chipping in to fund the upfront capital and so on and so forth. So that part is exciting. It's doing 114 homes. There's a link on the bottom with some great testimonials from existing clients there as well. I would argue, although this isn't theoretically mine water heat, I would still argue it's heat from the coalfield, and ultimately should be included in the same wider discussion. So really exciting thing in Wales there as well, 114 homes on that as far as I know. They're also adamant it costs much less than air source and has less pull on the electricity grid as well, which can be an issue, I guess, if you've got cumulative high amounts of air source heat pumps on the go. So Lydia showed this slide in the beginning. What can we do for Wales? We've got lots of resources out there. If you pop along to the Welsh Government website or type in Minewater Heat, you'll find open access maps with lots of pretty colours in a sliding scale from where it's good to challenging to do these things. There are reports in English and Welsh for each local authority, and it lays out simply where we think it's good or not, gives you some nice pictures and some maps. So it's done a lot of hard work there. We mentioned we have a live scheme in Wales finally to prove that concept, albeit 40 kilowatts. And what we'll be doing now is working with Cardiff Capital Region to really build on those maps and look for good areas within there. And we also have an exciting opportunity in Carmarthenshire as well, near Llangennith. So in summary, I think all of these examples from really large to much smaller can be applied to anywhere where you have water or even decent underground situations. Funding can be a challenge, I won't lie. Oh, apologies for spelling that, especially upfront capital. But it can clearly be brought around with that example from pension firm investment and so on and so forth. But there's a small footprint with most infrastructure underground. And I think if we've all worked in renewable energy, we know the pushback you can get from things that can be too visible. Here we don't have much that's left to be visible. We can go from small to large, and in my opinion anyway, we've had really great public perception, and that's one of the key things. We're really linking the proud heritage of these areas to a low carbon green future. It keeps the memory of coal mining alive, but repurposes it for future generations. And that's me over and out, Lydia.
Diolch, Gareth. That was great. And I think when we've spoken before, and I found it interesting to understand almost like the levels of minority heat projects you could have. I think the £70,000 Ammanford example, potentially for the community energy sector at least, is like where we could start small. You know, our members could gather that type of investment, start small with, you know, some water that's available. Going up to like the next step that might be, is there a treatment facility locally where water's already pumped out? In that case, there's no need for drilling, there's no need for some of the upfront cost. It can be a lot more affordable, I suppose. So yeah, trying to perceive it for our sector on what's the like small, medium initial steps we could take and build some expertise before going ahead with maybe a really large project, you know. And I think, funny enough, when you speak to our members about, you know, some of the projects that did need millions of investment, the money is never the hard bit. It's actually public perception, bringing communities on board, and engaging sort of decision makers in councils as well. So I think the money shouldn't scare too many people away, although it is a big consideration. And now I think I'll hand over to Sophie Jackson and Ali Turner, who are based in sort of Hordern, which is in Durham, and are looking at a project like this, but taking a community ownership angle. I'm just going to explain the journey so far, really, and what you've been up against. So, Diolch, I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, you're right. Thanks, Lydia. Morning, everybody. Thanks so much for having us on this call. It's really exciting to feel that connection with what's happening down in Wales to us up in the northeast. Just a little bit of context from the map. We're about 5 miles south of the garden village that's being developed in Dordon near Seaham. And when that project was first talked about, it felt like a future, you know, and that future's arriving now there. So where we're at in Hordern is on our timeline, we're a little bit behind that. But that feels okay because it's given us a little bit more time to get community ownership of the project, which is very much identified as an aim. So we're part of the same coalfield. When Gareth explained the way that it works, we've got really deep pits around here, or we did, and our pits go quite a way out to sea. So you've got a big, I think of it as like an element on a kettle that's gathering all of that geothermal energy, and we've got a huge element here, which means that there's a lot of water that we're dealing with. I saw someone had asked about the temperatures. Seaham, it was 20 degrees. Here it's 16 degrees. But it's about how much energy we can take out of that as well, because we've got a passive treatment site here. And there's been a lot of conversations with the the MRA about how much energy can be removed, because they've got to protect their passive treatment site as well. So there's lots of things to take into consideration. Is one of the things that I would say I've learned through this process is, at the very heart of it, I'm a coal miner's daughter, and I grew up with when the pit was open, and I remember the prosperity of the village, and I remember, you know, I remember the day really vividly when everyone's dads lost their jobs, and I grew up in that environment, and I've grown up around the impact of that, of like a lot of teenagers who didn't have jobs to go into, and now we're in our like third generation of worklessness and all of the health impacts that's had. So this project feels really personal to me, and it's been a challenge to navigate all of the different barriers. You know, lack of technical understanding is an issue that I have, because this is not an area of expertise for me. I've had to do a lot of learning, but the project started, I'm going to say, 5 years ago. The local authorities net zero team were really keen to look at, you know, all projects that could provide sustainable green energy, and this was one of them. Because we've got the passive treatment site here, Horden was seen as an ideal next after the garden village. And one of the things that was looked at straight away was around a similar housing scheme. But we have different issues in Horden. In Horden, we have a high number of empty homes at the moment, related. So our village peaked at a population of 15,000 back in the heyday, and it's now, the population's around about 8,000. So as the mining economy left, so did people. So we felt like there was a different opportunity here in Horden, and we've really identified that we want to use this project, if we can, to use the energy security that this project offers to enhance employment opportunities for local people. And that's where things are at the moment. We've had 5 different feasibility studies done over the last 5 years. Each one has provided, I would say, like a piece of the puzzle, in terms of whether this is a viable project. Each one has said that it is, which is really positive. But it's all about providing information that we are at a point now as a development group where we want to hand that over to the community, to allow the community to decide how best to use this energy in this area. One of the things I would have to mention is that Horden has one of the highest levels of deprivation in the UK, and has done for a very long time now. So I see that as like a cruise liner, and we need to turn that round, and that's going to take time. And so for us, it's less about getting this project across the line as quickly as possible, more about making sure that it's the right project, that's done with the right ethics and ideas, to make sure that it truly has benefit to the community. Because one of the things I just really feel around this project is that it was our dads and granddads who dug those tunnels, and it really is owed to this community. We took the coal out of the ground, and the whole country benefited from it. But it's really important that this community benefits from this asset. And that will be a challenge, because whenever there's a development opportunity, you're going to get different partners and actors that want to benefit from that. So it's become more and more important for us to kind of have that really embedded in the community, and have the power and the agency sit with the community. And we've developed a really strong partnership around that. In terms of East Trust, which I'll let Sophie explain their role. The Horden Together partnership, we're a local authority partnership who we're here to support the community of Horden, and we've just sort of like muscled our way into the Minewater project to try and, as a Horden resident, it's just been so important to me that we've had that representation in that group, because I think something I've felt is that there's a lot of projects happening that it's important to certain people to have it done as quickly as possible, or to get a project across the line. But for me, as I've mentioned, that there's cultural reasons why this needs to be for the benefit of this community. And I think that's why it resonated so much with me to want to share that experience with you guys today, because I feel like there's some real solidarity in terms of how mining was, and how redeveloping the energy security around mining communities could be. And I think it's about all of us learning from each other and supporting each other to get these projects going. So yeah, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more, Sophie, about East Trust's role and what they've done.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Ali. So the steering group at the moment, which has been working on the project for the last 5 years, has been hosted by East Durham Trust, which is the anchor organisation in East Durham, which works with all the different community partners and organisations. And Ali's been part of the steering group since day one. I think one of the only residents that's been there all the way through. And I've been brought on recently as the full-time community organiser from the project. It's like I say, it's been 5 years of feasibility studies and exploring what's possible. But now we're trying to move on to the project development phase. And in order for that to be possible, we need the community to be engaged as possible. So as Ali touched on at the beginning, it started as a kind of council project and they funded the first few feasibility studies. And now it's moving forward as a community owned project. And in over the next 10 months, we really want to set up our cooperative and move from a core steering group to having more members of the village involved and have a formal governance of a cooperative in Hordern. So more than half our steering group now are residents and the other half is organisations and experts that we work with to get to this point. And community engagement is difficult as there's a lot of people have a lot of problems in Hordern and a lot of other issues, and people don't want to, like you say, community energy might not be the first thing you want to get involved in. But I think what people really love is the historic connection and how, like what Ali touched on about how obviously it's our dads and granddads that worked in the pit, and now the possibility is that we can have an energy security in the future from the pit. So we're lucky that in Hordern we have a rich offer of community organisations and brilliant community figures who are working in the village, and that's really aided our community engagement and is a great starting point to engaging with the wider village. We've also had support from Durham University, which has been really helpful. They've actually put in a bid to get funding to help us do engagement in the village. And over the summer, we're going to be doing 3 different workshops, which is informing the village of what's happened so far, and trying to get their thoughts and ideas of what comes next. But another issue that we have is that I think it's safe to say the people of Hordern have been promised so much over so many years, well, decades, and nothing much really has happened. So there's a lack of trust, and yeah, people just think, oh, it's another project that won't happen. So we need to really, it's how we put the information out there and how we engage with residents. And obviously it's their project, it's the community's project. So forming our community benefit society and giving people ownership and governance of that is so important. And we also have the added challenge of a reformed county council here in Hordern now in County Durham. So that's another kind of, a challenge that we've got to face going forward. Is there anything else I've missed?
I think I would just say that, in Hordern, we are asset rich and all of our assets were built through the pit. So our welfare parks are amazing. They're beautiful spaces to be. But it causes high taxation. So we're sort of paying, if you check out our council tax, it's unbelievable. We're sort of paying for what we invested in the past. And again, that just feels like there's a real opportunity to use that model, the model that the pit had of investing in its community and investing in the people and the spaces in the community to make it a better place to be. Because that's, a really big issue for Hordern. Hordern has become, you just check it out on YouTube, it's become like almost the villain of worst places to live in the UK. That's not the experience of the people who live in Hordern, but that is creeping into the identity where you feel like you're having to defend yourself all the time as to why you would choose to live here. So for me, this is it's a really deep opportunity to redefine our identity. It's about being connected and it's about being hopeful, and it's about people having a central asset, as they did with the pit, that they can use to create a better future for themselves, and it's sustainable. And that's the big thing about this energy. It's 365 days a year, and it's might be low level energy compared with what you get coming out of your taps, but there's a lot of energy in that water. And again, I don't worry about how quickly we get this project done. That energy's there forever, so we just need to make sure it's used well and maximize the benefit to the community.
Oh, diolch yn fawr. Thank you so much for that. It was really, really interesting angle to, I think you touched on, you said this is ode to us. And that really struck home. I know Beth Ann is from a coalfield community, and probably a lot of people on this call, are from coalfield communities themselves. And I think that just really strikes a chord, really. And I think what this event tries to symbolise is, there are projects happening across the UK that we can learn from, but also there's that shared experience around, the reality of the entrenched poverty where we live, and people's rightful concerns of are things going to be delivered and when and how are we going to benefit. And so I think you've done a really good job of selling why these projects need to be, community owned, but also community driven, and to withstand that rush to meet targets when actually maybe going a little bit slower, and doing things better, would achieve far greater outcomes, I think, for our communities. And the links to, as you've mentioned, the investment that the pits did give, people invested a penny and a pound in their institutes and their, community infrastructure, really, and how this is a way to bring that past back to life, I think is fascinating. And just some of the shared challenges as well. I think probably a lot of our community energy members have maybe dealt with the same feeling that communities don't believe a project's going to come off, and how do you build and restore that trust. And I think essentially it needs to be led by the people like us that are from those communities and know them best as well. So that was really great. I think I'll just hand over to Simone now, who's going to present from the Durham Energy Institute's perspective. And any questions or observations, please feel free to just pop them in the chat, and also introduce yourselves and why you might be here today as well. Diolch.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Diolch yn fawr. Can I share some slides? Yeah, great. Share some pictures. So, oops, if I can get the right thing. Yeah, there we go. My name is, Zoom's playing tricks on me. My name is Simone Abram, and I'm Director of Durham Energy Institute, which is an institute that works across Durham University, basically connecting everyone doing energy research in whatever department they're in. So what we do is get conversations about energy from people with really different kinds of expertise and trying to bring them together. So that's really briefly what we do. But I wanted to introduce a project that we've been working on for about 4 years, which finished officially last year, but we're still sort of working on the themes. Where we took this kind of interdisciplinary perspective on geothermal mine water. So we were looking at using the heat from former mine workings and also using them for heat storage as well. So really creating long-term storage as well as kind of accessible heat. What I want to do today is just take a step back really and remind ourselves about the bigger pictures. In particular, things like energy security, especially given the current situation, the war in the Middle East, and we're really dependent on imported fuels, and we're really vulnerable to price volatility, and we're really vulnerable to shortages as well. So one of the really important things that mine water heats is reliability. We know it's there, and we know what the cost is going to be. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today. These are some slides from, they're actually originally from Ofgem, I think, about where the UK gets its gas from. And you can see the imports of natural gas on that picture on the right is from 2025. So obviously that picture's changed a lot in recent years. But it just shows how dependent we are on other countries, I think. Hopefully, much of what I'm going to say today you'll already be familiar with, but it'll be interesting to know if there's anything new. I'll try and tell you a bit about our research at the end as well. So, just to reiterate that one of the advantages of this kind of constant heat source underground is that it can accommodate the fluctuating demands that we've got. So we've got fluctuating supply from renewable energy, which is incredibly useful, and we need ways to store that and to use it when we need it. So there've been various explorations of storing heat in the mines. This is a picture of the Geoenergy Observatory in Glasgow. And we've also been looking at overground storage, so using what's called sorption, so just basically soaking up the heat from the sun, heating a fluid and storing it. And these are some kind of diagrams of what's actually quite complicated processes that some of our engineers and chemists have been developing in Durham. But just to take a big step back, I just think it's really important to remind ourselves that coal that came out of the mines drove the expansion of the British Empire. You know, in fact, it was the need for storing coal for steamships that drove the British government to build coal depots in the Middle East. And then because it wanted to keep them safe, it tried to control the populations and then gave concessions for things like, for businesses, in fact, often British businesses, to do things like run the tram system in Beirut. And it gave actually the British government control over governments in distant cities to keep those profits flowing back primarily into and through London. And you know, I'm sure we're all aware how little of that profit went back to the miners. You know, most of the value of that coal was extracted by the mine owners until nationalisation. You can say that the coal mines were financially extractive as well as extracting the coal. So they're sometimes called colonial for that reasons. So you could say that we're living a post-colonial era. And the challenge now really, I think, is that if we're going to extract the heat from the mines, how do we do that while keeping the benefits local? And how do we ensure that the mine water heat is just not another way to extract value for distant investors, but a way to share the value for post-coal communities? And actually, the picture on the bottom left is from the Grimethorpe colliery, and it's a picture of all the pits that were closed during the Thatcher era. So it's still and that's there on the wall today. Obviously, it's still very much a live issue in many ways. So Gareth mentioned some of the UK mine water schemes, and I thought I'd mention a few a bit further afield. Here's a list of schemes around Europe. And that's actually a picture of the pumping station in Dordon that's feeding Seaham village. And you'll see it's really well established. And I'm not sure whether I've challenged Gareth on whether Gateshead is really the biggest scheme. I've got a feeling that the one in the Netherlands in Heerlen might be one of the largest. That's been around for 20, 30 years. And in fact, it's grown to the extent that they don't really call it a mine water scheme anymore because they're using so many different sources of heat from commercial centres, from factories. It's just a big heat network, and coal, so mine water is one of the sources that they're using. Basically, that means we know it works, right? Technically, and we know it can be economically valuable as well. Some of these schemes were actually started off with European regional funding, which actually funded some of the Gateshead scheme as well for them to build the original heat network. And then they've become increasingly diversified. This is the one that Gareth didn't mention. This is Lanchester Wines, which is actually I believe it's the second biggest wine bottling company in the UK. And they, because they're privately owned and wanted to be a sustainable company, they invested in a mine water scheme some years back, one of the first in the UK, because the temperature's constant, and that's exactly what they need for storing their wine. Gateshead you've already heard about, and this is just some illustration of the mine workings and the way that the colliery maps look, which is quite interesting. So I'm just thinking a little bit about remediation. I mean, you'll be really aware of the kind of limitations of the post-coal settlement in the regions. And we've seen a lot of this kind of investment. It's a bit of a small picture maybe, but this is not that far from Hordern, and it's a former pit that was turned into a sort of retail discount centre. And now I'm just going to show you some facts about this retail outlet, because I think it's really important to just scratch a bit on the surface and see where the money's going. And this is owned by a private equity firm through an offshore account in Jersey, run by a former Lehman Brothers banker. I don't want to criticise them for investing in the area at all, but I just want to show that where the money is going from this kind of investment. So it raises a question about how can we reinvent a business model so that we can share the benefits. And actually, it's a really strange day to be discussing this, because you may be aware that the government's about to publish its future home standard today. Hopefully, it's not been made available yet, although it's been sort of previewed in the press. And it's rumoured that one of the key elements in that is that they will be encouraging the investment in heat networks, which is something that we've been asking for a long time, because heat networks from whatever source of heat are by far the most effective way of decarbonising our heating system and getting us off our dependence on gas. So at the moment, government investments is really only for large scale investments. So things like the contract for difference for offshore wind and also for hydrogen and various other things, or things like the infrastructure bank, which basically starts lending out about 50 million. So you'd need quite a few local authority or community organisations to need to borrow that much money. And until now, the government's just been using one kind of financial model for heat networks. So they have this idea that you need one big anchor load, hence the investment in like a leisure centre, where you've got a big swimming pool or maybe a big factory that you know is definitely going to take take the heat for 20 years. So they want that kind of anchor customer. And then, yeah, you can add some houses onto that, and that's fine. Which, you know, is a reliable business model, but it doesn't really offer any opportunity for community energy. It's also really focused on financial risk. So risks like there's no water in the mine when you drill, or business risks like the scheme goes bust because it doesn't have any customers. But really the risk or the financial challenge here is to do with what's called a discount rate. And without getting too technical, this is a way of saying that the risk of the investment defines the rate you can borrow money. So that's called a discount rate. And the cost is much higher for borrowing smaller amounts or borrowing for really innovative schemes than it is for larger, more normal ones. So it's actually the cost of borrowing the money that's the biggest problem here. So what kind of alternatives have we got? So, I mean, first, I think it's really important to recognise that energy is not just a consumer good. It's actually something we all need. We all rely on energy and we need it to live. So we're more than customers. Sometimes people are called energy citizens. So access to energy is a right as well as a good. So that means we should have some say as citizens in how we get access to that energy. So we can ask about what the collective benefit, what's the benefit to the state, that's just all of us collectively, that we can gain from using our own energy. And a really important lesson here comes from Denmark, and the Danish government's actually been doing quite a lot of promotion on this recently. They decided back in the 1970s to promote heat networks, but they wouldn't allow them to be privately owned. They were either collectives, cooperatives, owned by local authority or by community organisations, but they had to be non-profit. And the really interesting thing is that during the 1980s, for a brief period, they allowed them to be privatised. And they really quickly found that the companies that bought them made their data secret, and they failed to invest in maintenance, and they raised the prices. And they actually had about 10% annual price increases, really poor maintenance, and it made actually really hard to sell your house if you were on a heat network. So after a few years, the government brought them back into the non-profit sector, and they found really quickly that prices dropped and maintenance improved to the extent that they had cost decreases by up to a third, a lot of technical improvements, and around a 75% decrease in the administrative costs, and a really big lowering of the water losses from 2,000 litres a day to 9 litres a day. So I think there's a really clear lesson there that community-owned heat networks are much more effective, more efficient, cheaper to run, better looked after. So just to finish, what can the university do to help? And as Ellie mentioned, we're working quite closely with Horden at the moment to try and help them get closer to what they're trying to achieve. one of the things that we have been doing in Durham is developing some models that make it easier to calculate how much water you can extract from which part of the mine and how long it will last. So this is just to illustrate some of the digital modeling computing that they're doing in the Earth Sciences department. Based on these really, like the different mining methods left a different kind of result underground. And of course, things have moved underground since the mines closed. So they've been trying to model what the kind of heat transfer optimal solutions would be. And this is from the Hutton coal seam, which is below Durham. Actually, we're about to sink some boreholes on the Durham University campus to see what opportunities there are there as well. So I'll probably stop there and say if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Diolch, Simon. That was really, really interesting. I had no idea about the 80s when in Denmark, I think it was, you said they privatized, and the lessons of doing that were huge. So it'd be great if you do have any links to that research. I'm sure our audience and myself would really like to have a little read on that. No, that'd be great. I think we're gonna probably head over to Anthony if you're okay if you want to share screen and present slides or just speak. Diolch, Ab.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no slides with me. Thank you very much. I'm just going to very quickly, before I start, stick our manifesto in chat. It's kind of basically what I'm going to be talking about. So feel free to sort of have a thumb through that whilst I'm talking. So yeah, I'm from Coal Action Network. We our main history is in saying no to things. We've been for the last sort of 20 years. We've been the foremost organisation around the UK saying no to new coal mines and new coal expansions. Done quite well. So there's only one coal mine left in the UK now, and so that's kind of made us start to change our direction and start to look at legacy issues around coal mines. And part of that is looking at open cast mines that have just not been restored well at all, which is a huge issue. But then the other side of that is this work, the Minewater heat network part of it, and this is the really beautiful side, and the side that is full of opportunity and innovation that we're really excited about, and obviously many other people are as well. We start to include a focus on Minewater heat in our manifesto, in our Welsh manifesto there, because we identified a bit of a gap between what is what the potential is versus what is actually being implemented, and to a degree what the ambition is as well. Very often we look at Gateshead, what was what's happened there, and obviously at Seaham as well. So I think I made some notes when Gareth had his slides up earlier that Gateshead's got 600 homes and a heap of big buildings as part of their network, and Seaham's got 750 homes. The next biggest ones are like the old warehouse here, the old street there. Nothing all that huge, and like that's really important to have those scale projects, particularly for community energy. But the conversations that we've had with local authorities, there is a real gap in knowledge for local authorities that just do not know about this technology. So we want to try and fill that gap, bring people up to speed to some degree, but also increase that level of ambition. We looking at the map that we showed earlier, and looking at some of the sort of main customers that could be using the networks, we identified three kind of main places across Wales that could be. This isn't, this obviously isn't like the sole places that are going to benefit from this, but these are three hotspots in Wales that could be massively benefiting from this at a Gateshead level potentially, and that's particularly Wrexham, the west side of Wrexham, has got huge potential. The hospital there sits directly above the former mine workings, and you've got the university and the football ground there, as well as a bunch of new developments happening around there, which could massively develop from it. As well as that, like that kind of South Carmarthenshire into North Swansea corridor there is another great opportunity. I'm not from the area, so I'm not familiar how much work is going on, how much new developments is going on around there. But again, it looks like a huge opportunity, and then particularly around the sort of the middle of the valleys there, that Caerphilly kind of region and Rhondda area, just has huge amounts of potential there, which we're really excited about. What we Where we're coming to it from is from our background. We helped and stood alongside communities to fight against new coal extraction when communities didn't want coal extraction in their area. We're kind of like doing the opposite job, but in areas with those same communities, we're looking to sort of help support communities to um, to fight for these projects to happen in their communities, which we think is another really great opportunity. I won't go over pretty much everything I was going to say has already been said. I'll quickly kind of give a brief kind of overview of it though. But like the benefits of this technology is huge. I really loved what Ali was saying, that's very similar to the things that I say about this technology. The cultural side, the heritage, bringing that heritage, it's like the logical expansion of the legacy of that coal mining heritage, and bringing it into modern day. We absolutely, as Simone said, we absolutely need to guard ourselves against the kind of extractivism that that coal coal extraction in terms of extracting resources out of communities. We need to make sure that these projects only give to communities, and that's a huge part as well. But you know, it's a good news story. It's lowering bills. The energy security side of it means that people are guarded against shocks like what we're experiencing right now. It brings good new local jobs back to people in the valleys, and keeps them there. And on top of that, we're bringing emissions down. It's a unicorn of a project. So yeah, we're really excited about it. One of the next things that we are looking to do is again form that network of not just communities but councillors, and people who work in local authorities across the whole of the UK to basically facilitate a space so that councillors, people who work for local authorities, can all be in the same place, learn from each other. If you've got a project happening in the northeast that can be learnt from by someone in South Wales, get them in the same room or in the same meeting like this, and all be having the same conversations. That's the kind of area that we are now about to start moving into. So if you are interested in being in rooms and learning from other people, and other communities and doing similar things that you want to be, then please do give us a line. I'll drop my email in the comments, and please do get in touch. And I'll leave it there.
Oh, diolch, Anthony. That was really helpful and great to have a bit of a Welsh perspective on the ongoing campaigns that have been going on in this space for a little while now, and the role Coal Action Network has played. And I think on that same wavelength, Bethan is just going to talk to why this matters to a Climate Cymru perspective. Diolch.
Ie, diolch. Fi yw Bethan Syed, a dwi'n pennaeth gwleidyddiaeth ac reolaeth ar gyfer Climate Cymru, a mae pawb wedi dweud popeth sydd yn bwysig i'w ddweud heddiw, dwi'n credu, o ran pam fod prosiectau fel hyn mor bwysig. Dyn ni'n rwydwaith o dros 400 o fudiadau gwahanol sydd yn ymgyrchu ar gyfer yn erbyn newid hinsawdd, ond sydd yn edrych ar tyfu prosiectau fel hyn ar draws Cymru. Dyn ni yn cael aelodau yma yn yr ystafell, dyn ni'n gweithio gyda pob dydd. Mae lot o weithredoedd ar lawr gwlad i hybu'r hyn dych chi'n gwneud yn gymunedol, ac yn ystod yr etholiad yma yn benodol, dyn ni wedi lansio mudiad o'r enw Cymru Together, sydd yn edrych ar sut ni'n gallu enyn gwleidyddion a ymgeiswyr yn y etholiad i feddwl am y materion yma, i rhoi pŵer nôl yn ein cymunedau, i sicrhau nad ydyn nhw'n echdynnu ohonyn nhw sydd yn gwneud y cymunedau teimlo fel bod nhw'n rhan o'r broses, nid bod pethau yn cael eu gwneud iddyn nhw. Ac fel oedd Lydia yn gweud ar y cychwyn, dwi'n rhywun sydd yn dod o Ferthyr yn wreiddiol a wedi treulio fy mywyd yn ymgyrchu yn erbyn globrig yn yr ardal, un o'r globrig mwyaf ym Mhrydain, ffos y Fran, echdynnu o'r cymuned hynny ac yn creu problemau i'r cymuned hynny o ran ei iechyd, ond nawr fel Anthony yn gallu ymgyrchu ar gyfer rhywbeth positif, cadarnhaol i'r dyfodol, gyda gwres dŵr o Mwyngloddio, fel bod y cwmnïau, fel bod y cymunedau hynny yn gallu buddio nad yw e'n rhywbeth sydd yn negyddol. Ac mae hyn yn rhan o'n DNA yn dywe, mae glofiaidd wedi siapio pwy ydyn ni, a dyn ni eisiau cofio hyn mewn ffordd positif, ond dyn ni eisiau defnyddio'r ynni nawr mewn ffordd nad sydd yn anafu ein plant i'r dyfodol fel oedd glo yn anffodus. Ac felly buddsoddi mewn cyfiawnder, dyn ni'n gweld sut mae Mwyngloddio gwres dŵr, buddsoddi yn ein pobl mewn ffordd gwahanol, a sicrhau bod y cysyniad yma o perchnogaeth yn rhan gynhenid o'r hyn dyn ni'n gwneud, fel oedd Sophie ac Ali yn trafod yn gynharach. A just pwynt hefyd o edrych yn fyd-eang, dyn ni'n cael grŵp o'r enw Global Climate Justice yn Climate Cymru, mudiadau fel Oxfam, Christian Aid ac yn y blaen. A be dyn ni eisiau sicrhau yw bod ni'n gweld hyn fel rhywbeth i diogelu'r dyfodol hefyd. Dyn ni'n gweld yr hyn sydd yn digwydd ar lefel byd-eang, a dyw e ddim yn mynd i diogelu ni i barhau i echdynnu o olew a nwy a mewnforio hynny o gwledydd tramor. Felly mae'n rhaid i ni edrych ar pethau gwahanol, ar atebion gwahanol. Dyna sydd yn rili bwysig i ni fel rhwydwaith. A jyst i orffen, fel mae Anthony'n gweud, mae angen i ni fod yn uchelgeisiol. Dyn ni wedi gweld cwbl o prosiectau yma yng Nghymru, ond mae'r potensial yn mor fawr. Felly edrych ar hyn yn debyg i hydro, yn debyg i pŵer y môr a pŵer y gwynt i'r dyfodol, fel bod ni'n gallu tynnu'r biliau yna lawr, edrych ar bywydau pob dydd, mae pobl yn stryglo, sut bod ni'n gallu gwella bywydau pob dydd pobl yng Nghymru a gwneud iddyn nhw deimlo yn rhan o'r broses. Dyna sydd yn bwysig i ni yn Climate Cymru. Diolch yn fawr iawn am y cyfle i siarad. Thank you very much for the chance to be here today. It's a learning process for me, and hopefully we can engage with all of you from across the UK to get the expertise to ensure that we can progress this for the future, and that a new Welsh Government, a new Senedd in May can potentially go with this in a much more proactive way. We do know obviously there's been pilots across Wales, as has been spoken to earlier, and hopefully that they can be expanded and developed to the future. Diolch.
Oh, diolch Beth, and you lined me up really nicely for that plug, essentially. I think following on from this event, we're really keen to explore whatever avenues both, community members, but also people working in this space in the third sector would like to explore on kind of raising the profile, really, and showing that I think traditionally our communities have been underserved by mine water heat. We know the demand is there. I think it's fair to say Welsh Government have put their money into more simple technologies that are going to, be less costly, which completely makes sense. But I think we have a potential future change of government in Wales. And I think really the sell here is if you want to make an impact, if you want to have a legacy in coal mining communities, this is something maybe for that new government to get behind. And so I know Anthony's mentioned his manifesto, Bethan's mentioned Together Cymru. I think there's enough going on in Wales and maybe just connecting the dots. I spoke to Wayne Thomas from Tower Colliery just this week, who's one of the shareholders, and has said, you've got the NUM support if you need it. So I think there could be room for a two-pager, sort of co-signed document from us all just on like the weight of this campaign. But also if there's future events where we do get into more of the detail, sorry Gareth, I'll be dragging you back. If people want that, then we can provide that as well. We're conscious that today was a bit more of an introduction and to try and cover all angles really, social, economic, technical, cultural, to just get interest and see what interest is there. So if anyone has any ideas and wants to reach out, please get in touch with us after the event. We can also create something like a working group to meet regularly on this as well, because I think there is so much broad support. Gwen, I was just going to quickly pop a poll on the screen. It is a little bit annoying. The feedback is notoriously impossible to get at events like this. So there's about 6 questions. If you wouldn't mind just quickly chucking in some answers, at least then we can keep the funders happy. And just gives us an opportunity to really understand, what is landing, what isn't, and to do better next time, really. So I'll just leave that on the screen for a little while. And just remind everyone that we'll come into questions next for about 15 minutes. So if anyone wants to think of what they'd like to ask any of our participants, or any of our speakers, but also for speakers, if they want to ask another speaker a question, feel free to just do that as well. And if anyone's got sort of observations, not only questions, but just observations on how they felt today's gone as well, feel free to unmute and share your observations. Go on, I can't see if how many people fill in the poll, so I'll leave it up a little bit longer before I end it, and then no one gets a chance. On my screen it says 3 out of 36, now 6. Okay, it's going up. I'll just uncomfortably wait a little bit longer. And I was also thinking, Anthony, about, any future events and training you do, please let us know and we can share through our networks, because I think not doubling up on stuff would be great. And so platforming the work you'll be doing would be more impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be great to collaborate as much as possible going forward. One thing I'll quickly just add while we're waiting is I had a meeting last week with the Deputy First Minister about a range of stuff, and we brought this up. And one of the things we kind of asked the question of what's slowing this down, or why is this not being like pushed like a lot more by the Welsh Government? Because as Gareth said, there was the MRA did a bunch of reports for local authorities back in 2024. The government's not really doing anything at the moment, obviously, in the lead up to the election, and you probably could argue for the last 6 months in the lead up to the election. So there's a good year there that they could have been doing more. We could have asked that question, and the government's response is very much they're a bit scared to sort of really push the communications of this technology. They're worried that that people will link mine water with flooding and destabilizing the mines, and therefore affecting people's houses and stuff like that. And none of that's actually true, but that's their concerns. More of a comms thing, and I think that's certainly where we see ourselves as sort of like build from the grassroots and help people sort of actively ask for this from the grassroots up. And I think that's the job of everyone on this call as well, to sort of really de-risk some of these perceptions for government and for everyone else as well. So yeah, I hope that's taken off.
That's really interesting context, I think, for all of us in this space to be aware of. Yeah, definitely. I think just more to Sophie and Ali's point of if it's bottom up, if it's driven by communities, there's less of this antagonism, sort of fear that what's going to happen, if you're in the driving seat and it's been done well, led by communities, then a lot of those fears, I think, dissipate. What we've had is top-down projects that communities find out about far too late and have no actual ability to change these projects. And it's led to this, real frustration, I think, in our communities that, bottom-up solutions really smash through that, I think. So there are some questions in the chat. I'll just read one of them out. I think it's from RhAY saying, what potential funding sources, such as Welsh Government or other public sector programmes, can be used to support feasibility and early stage investigations for Minewater heat opportunities? And just to add on, I also thought this week, I know Cymru has smart local energy scheme funds, and heat is part of a SLES, but I'm not familiar of seeing one be applied for on this. So if anyone wants to take that question on, or anyone in the audience has any insight. Gareth?
Yeah, I don't mind trying it. I know Marcia from Welsh Gov wanted to be here but couldn't be here, so I don't know if there's anyone from Welsh Government Energy Service, which would be a first port of call to perhaps push you towards. They've got a good website with lots of different ranges of funding on there as well, but like I mentioned as well, we've seen progress with closed loop shared arrays via sort of Octopus and Kenza, and funding ultimately from pension funds and things as well, so private funding. Simone mentioned privately funded schemes in the northeast too. I didn't mention as well. So I think there's a range of options, and to avoid a really soft sell, that if you want to drop me a line, we can also do a high level quick look and see, as we call it, on any site for anyone.
That's great. Thanks,
just
Gareth.
to rule things in or out early on.
I know Steve Keating's on the call with his hand up, so if you wanted to come back on that, and then we'll go to Sophie and Ali. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Lydia, you mentioned Any Cymru, so obviously I'm involved with the Any Cymru scheme. It actually opens on Thursday for round 3. It's a grant funding scheme, and it's for capital deployment. It unfortunately doesn't fund feasibility, which is often a sticking point, isn't it? As Gareth said, Welsh Government Energy Service would be great for supporting any community or public sector scheme up through feasibility. But when it's capex ready, Any Cymru would be very interested in some sort of heat scheme.
That's great to know. Thanks, Steve. Sophie, Ali?
I was just going to add that our latest feasibility study has been funded through the North Eastern Yorkshire Net Zero Hub, which is funded through DESNZ. And I didn't know what the alternative is in Wales. Do you have the Net Zero Hubs too, or is it different? Would that be devolved?
Yeah, we don't have net zero hubs in Wales, so it's probably, funding would come through Welsh Government Energy Service, I'd imagine. But just to flag, I suppose, for the audience, GB Energy has released, information on its local power plan, and the key driver there, the message is, there's grants and loans available for projects that are partnership projects delivered via local authorities with communities. So there has to be partnered with community energy organisations. I don't think maybe there's much discussion of like heat networks within that space, but there's certainly no reason that they would be exempt then. So I think, yeah, looking at collaborative work with local authorities to try and capture those funds would be potentially an interesting avenue to explore. And something we can support with as well. If people want to know if there's any feasibility funds available, we can always reach out and come back to you. Ali?
Sorry, I was just going to add as well, across our 5 years we've been looking at it, it's been a little bit like the Magic Faraway Tree, which is one of my favourite childhood books, and it's about to come out as a film so people might understand the context. In that, funding pots come and go, and they sort of like, it just seems no rhyme and reason as to feasibility is eligible at one point and then it isn't, and then it's just to keep an eye on it, and don't, like I said, this energy's there forever. Don't feel like because there isn't a current funding stream that's exactly right, it doesn't mean that there won't be in the near future. It's just always just keeping that horizon scanning.
That's great. Simone?
I was just going to remind you that the local energy plan is still on its way out. So when that comes out, that hopefully will come with some funding to help community energy organisations move on with their projects. But I mean, we have to wait and see about that. But I think I've got this sense that there is some funding coming through, and also some legislation to make it easier. But watch that space, I think, in terms of community energy funding.
Yeah, and I think back to Sophie's, Ali's point, really, what we tend to say is, a lot of our community groups are interested in doing things like hydro, but maybe the market conditions aren't quite there yet. There's nothing stopping communities just exploring this locally. Are there people that might want to get involved? What would it look like? Speak to Gareth and reach out about an early little, look at a map, is something potential, is something, is potential there. And utilising that time that you have that can be frustrating to just build slowly. Are there any questions from the audience at all? If anyone wants to use the raise hand function, or just observations and why you're here today. Otherwise, I've got some questions I've written down, but I'd rather go to the audience itself than just myself. No? If you have got one, just feel free to unmute and ask away. No? Okay, I did have a question around, Ali, when we were speaking in the week, you said you perceive your project as a cultural project just as much as it's an energy project. And I just thought I'd ask, why? And then I've just seen Beth's got a question, so we'll go to Beth then. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of what I was talking about earlier, is that my identity is being from a coal mining community, and that has been a positive identity throughout my life, despite everything everyone else has told me, if that makes sense. Like, despite the external view of where I'm from, I love being from, and I've always loved being from here. But I've also seen the economic decline, and I've seen the social decline around me. So I feel like this project is the first big thing that's landed that feels really integral to my culture, of it being this is from us and for us. Other regeneration schemes have felt like external, and they're not culturally relevant. And I mean, Simone used that picture of Dalton Park, and I remember being told about Dalton Park as a teenager, like, this is coming, this is going to be good, and like almost like you need to be grateful for it, be grateful that we're going to regenerate your former coal mining community, because there'll be jobs. And it's like, well, they're low-level entry jobs and they don't have any future or career or training attached to them, so I'm not sure I should feel grateful for that. So this feels like something different, where it's a forever energy, and we will get to determine how it's used and who will benefit long term. And that's the first thing that I've seen in my lifetime that I've just really resonated with, and I've felt like this is something that I'm so connected to. And that's why, despite my complete lack of technical understanding of any of it, I've just kind of hung in by my fingertips. And I would say that is, like, for anyone getting involved in a similar project, you're going to need to be resilient. And that's something in our culture, that's something we're good at. You're going to need to speak up, but you're going to need to stay open-minded as things move through, and you keep thinking, whoa, this is moving away from what I envisaged. Just hang in there and keep your voice being heard, because that is so important to getting these things where they need to be.
And you've mentioned not having technical, not having deep technical insight at the start, but I think that's an interesting story for a lot of people that maybe feel the same, that, you can stick with it. But also, what context and cultural heritage do you bring to a project? You've got that ancestry that's really, really important in that local context that, you can't buy that. I think the one thing,
the team getting a good partnership. We've got some great technical knowledge coming in, and it's brilliant to be partnering with Durham University, because we feel like they're going to just add something that we're not going to be able to do ourselves. So it's brilliant.
And you can resource that technical skill, can't you? But you can't buy a miner's granddaughter necessarily.
Yeah,
I'll just
it's so surprising.
Oh, sorry, Sophia.
No, I was just going to say it's like positive and like surprising how in like a small village like Horden, like on our Stephen group, we've got so many different skills and knowledge, and like everyone comes together in one room and everyone brings something different. But yeah, together we have an understanding, but not everyone's like super technical, or not everyone knows the village inside and out. So that's so important.
It's how you come together, isn't it? Build our wealth of knowledge. Beth, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sorry, my camera isn't working. Yeah, I just want to say thank you really to all the speakers and in particular to Ali and Sophie in Horden because it resonates so much with us here in the South Wales valleys. Um, I think in Wales, this is an observation, I suppose, because like you, probably we've suffered extraction and exploitation for decades, if not centuries. We're at the stage now, I think, is a critical juncture where we've got to find that new sense of belonging. And the seeds are there for us here. And listening to you has just been so inspirational. And it'd be good to catch up with you afterwards. We have in the South Wales Valleys just established a community benefits society, and we're on the cusp of launching a Valleys community energy organisation. So we're not in the same place as yourselves, but everything you said is, like I said, is music to my ears, and I know others on this call. So please, it'd be really good to have a conversation with you outside this meeting, and thank you for being so inspiring. Diolch.
Oh, thanks, Beth. Yeah, that's great. And I suppose just coming back to the comms line, Anthony, I think potentially there's a tool for us to talk about the positive comms. You know, the thing that strikes me is that there is no visual disruption from these projects, unlike other projects where we see some pushback. You know, Gareth mentioned you can't even see the borehole sites, you can walk over them. But also that unlike electricity that can be sent off from where it's generated, you know, into England, Scotland, etc. on the grid, heat can't be. Heat has to be used where it is generated and where it is extracted, essentially. So I think there's also that angle of like, well, who's benefiting from this project? Has to be used on site. So, you know, I think that's a really interesting angle as well. I'm just going to wrap up probably now, not to run over and let everyone have the rest of their days back, but just a massive diolch, thank you to all of our speakers that came. I think it was really rich having such different angles and perspectives on what can sometimes be quite a dry and confusing topic to kind of open it out to more than just the energy side of things. I've just got a few updates to give. If I grab my notes. If anyone does want to stay in touch with one another, please feel free to put anyone's emails and contacts in the chat. We'll be sharing the slides and this recording of this event afterwards. Just from myself then, there'll be a feedback form we'll be sending around. So we do ask everyone to fill that in if possible. Gwenna will put in the chat as well now. This week, Community Energy Wales has got an event in the Arts Factory in Mardy on Thursday evening with Hugh Davis, who will be responding to our manifesto ahead of the Senedd elections. We've done these with the leaders of every political party so far in Wales and those that were keen to engage. So that is this Thursday in Mardy, the Arts Factory with Hugh Davis. You can access tickets for that. They're free, but you can sign up on our website. And then just from an Energy Learning Network point of view, our technical helpline has been launched on the website, on the Energy Learning Network website. We've set up a technical helpline. It's hosted by Community Energy Scotland, but accessible to everyone in Wales. And it offers quick specialist support for specific technical questions. And the team can advise you on sort of renewable technologies, energy efficiency, things like that, with a quick way of just getting responses to your questions. All of these will follow up with links in the email. And then also just to flag that the Energy Learning Network and my role, we run a mentoring program. And we're recruiting currently for people to sign up to be mentored. So we're recruiting for mentees. So if you'd like to sign up and you want some support with governance, or you want to gain insight into the basics of hydro or solar, or even community engagement, you know, how can you learn a bit more about how to do community engagement in a bottom-up way? The things that we offer mentoring on are quite vast, and so please sign up. But we're also putting out a plea to our community energy sector in Wales. We do also need more Welsh language speaking mentors. And so if you think you could support, it's paid at a day rate of £330 a day to provide that mentoring support. So I'll send links to both of that afterwards. But just about to finish on time, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, diolch yn fawr pawb. Thank you so much for coming along, and thank you to our really engaging speakers for today's event. I think we've all learned quite a lot. So diolch and speak soon. Ta-ra. Bye.